What Trump just did is one of the most dangerous power grabs we've seen in modern American history. We need to talk about how Trump is literally asking the Supreme Court for permission to occupy American cities with military force. Let me set the scene for you. Over the past few months, Trump has been obsessed, and I mean obsessed, with sending military troops into Democratic-led cities. Chicago, Portland, Los Angeles, Memphis, Washington, D.C., the list keeps growing. And his justification? Crime. That's it. Just crime. But here's the thing. Chicago's homicide rate this summer was literally the lowest it's been since the 1960s. Let that sink in. The 1960s. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson has the receipts showing that homicides, shootings, robberies, and carjackings are all declining. So why is Trump so desperate to send troops there? Because this has never been about crime. This has always been about power, control, and punishing cities that didn't vote for him. In early October, Trump's Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth mobilized 300 members of the Illinois National Guard to Chicago. And get this, he also deployed 200 members of the Texas National Guard. You read that right. Texas troops in Illinois, without the Illinois governor's permission. Let me repeat that because it's absolutely wild. Trump sent troops from one state into another state against that state's wishes. The ostensible reason? To protect ICE facilities and personnel during immigration enforcement operations. But we all know what's really happening here. This is about intimidation. This is about showing Democratic governors and mayors who's boss. This is about testing how far he can push the envelope before someone stops him. Well, someone did try to stop him. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker and Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson immediately filed a lawsuit, arguing that the deployment was unconstitutional and illegal. And you know what? The courts agreed. On October 8th, a federal judge temporarily blocked Trump from federalizing and deploying the National Guard in Illinois. The judge basically said, yeah, no, you don't get to do that. Then on October 16th, a federal appeals court upheld that decision, keeping the block in place. The three-judge panel was pretty clear in their ruling. They looked at the statute Trump was using to justify this deployment, a law that allows the president to call up the Guard when there's a rebellion against the federal government or a foreign invasion. And they essentially said, we don't see any rebellion or foreign invasion here, buddy. U.S. District Judge April Perry was even more blunt. She said she found no convincing evidence that a danger of rebellion exists in Illinois. Translation: Trump is making this up. But here's where it gets really scary. On Friday, October 17th, Trump's Solicitor General, D. John Sauer, filed an emergency appeal with the Supreme Court. And the language in this petition is absolutely chilling. The Trump administration argues that lower courts are impermissibly encroaching on the president's authority to control federalized Guard members. They say the court order is putting the judicial branch in the untenable position of controlling the military chain of command and judicially micromanaging the exercise of the president's commander-in-chief powers. Let me translate that for you. Trump is arguing that courts literally cannot review his decision to send military troops into American cities. He's saying that once he decides there's a threat, even if there isn't one, courts have no power to stop him. That's not how checks and balances work. That's not democracy. That's authoritarianism. The petition uses what can only be described as fear-mongering language, asserting that federal officials in Chicago have been threatened and face ongoing and intolerable risks to their lives and safety. But where's the evidence? Where are the documented attacks that justify military occupation of an American city? They can't provide it because it doesn't exist. Here's what's really at stake here, and why every American, regardless of political affiliation, should be terrified by this. Trump is essentially arguing for unlimited presidential power to deploy military force domestically without meaningful judicial oversight. Think about the implications of that for a second. If the Supreme Court sides with Trump, future presidents of any party would have the precedent to send troops into any city for any reason and claim it's a matter of national security that courts can't review. Don't like protests in your city? Send in the troops. Mayor won't cooperate with your federal agenda? Send in the troops. Want to intimidate voters in areas that don't support you? Send in the troops. This is literally the stuff of banana republics and authoritarian regimes. This is what happens in countries where democracy has collapsed. And Trump is asking the Supreme Court to make it legal in the United States. Now, the Trump administration points to a 1932 case called Sterling versus Constantine to argue that there are limits to judicial review of Guard deployments. But here's what they conveniently leave out. In that case, the Supreme Court actually allowed judicial review and ruled that courts could examine whether such deployments fell within a range of honest judgment. So even the case Trump cites as precedent contradicts his argument that courts can't review these decisions at all. And it's not just Chicago. Let's look at the pattern here, because it's incredibly revealing. Trump has attempted to deploy, or has deployed, National Guard troops to nearly a dozen cities in just his first few months back in office. What do all these cities have in common? They're all run by Democratic mayors. Most are in states with Democratic governors. Noticing a pattern? Portland got federal troops over protests at an ICE facility. A judge there also blocked the deployment, saying Trump exceeded his constitutional authority because protests don't constitute a danger of rebellion. Los Angeles got troops. Memphis got troops. Washington, D.C. got troops under a crime emergency declaration that Mayor Muriel Bowser had to navigate very carefully to maintain any local control. In Memphis, Trump signed a presidential memorandum claiming crime had reached tremendous levels that overwhelmed its local government's ability to respond effectively. Memphis Mayor Paul Young pointed out that the city had actually been making progress reducing crime after a spike in 2023. But facts don't matter when you're building a narrative. And here's the kicker. When Trump deployed troops to D.C., he created a specialized National Guard unit specifically designed to assist local law enforcement, not just in D.C., but potentially around the U.S. This isn't reactive, folks. This is planned. This is a strategy. Trump's rhetoric around all of this has been absolutely unhinged. He's called Chicago a war zone. He posted on social media that Chicago would find out why it's called the Department of War, referring to his rebrand of the Pentagon, by the way, which is its own nightmare. He's threatened to invoke the Insurrection Act. He's called for the arrests of Governor Pritzker and Mayor Johnson for failing to protect ICE officers. Read that again. The President of the United States wants to arrest a governor and a mayor for not cooperating with his military occupation of their city. Mayor Johnson responded powerfully, saying, "This is not the first time Trump has accused or insisted on a black man being arrested. A president that is threatening to jail his political opponents is clear. Yet another example of authoritarianism." And he's absolutely right. This is straight out of the authoritarian playbook. Vilify your political opponents. Claim they're weak on crime or national security. Send in military force to restore order. Arrest anyone who resists. We've seen this movie before, and it never ends well. I don't live in Chicago. Why should I care? Because today it's Chicago. Tomorrow it's your city. Today it's ICE facilities. Tomorrow it's any federal priority. Republicans should worry too. What happens with a future Democratic president? Would you want them having this power to send troops into conservative cities? This isn't left versus right. This is authoritarian versus democratic. This is about whether we have checks and balances or unlimited executive power. We're at a crossroads. Are we a nation of laws with checks and balances? Or can the president deploy military force wherever, whenever, for whatever reason he claims? This is not normal. This is not okay. This is not what America should be. Complacency is how authoritarians win. We're dangerously close to the point of no return.
If you enjoyed the video, hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos.